A human farmer inherited a ruined outpost. Then $2 billion in ore was discovered. The golden fields of Alurin 5 stretch for miles, the twin suns of the planet glinting off the crops like scattered coins. Farming had been his life for as long as he could remember. He knew the soil here better than most, understood the wind and the rainfall patterns, and could predict the growth of his crops almost as if he were reading a book. He had just finished repairing a broken irrigation pump when the comm device on his wrist buzzed insistently. Frowning, he pressed the screen. A voice, formal and monotone, spoke. "Mr. Tallon, this is the Office of Legal Affairs. You have received a notification regarding an inheritance from your late relative, Howard Tallon. Please confirm your availability for details." Jard blinked. Howard Tallon. He barely remembered his distant uncle, a man who had vanished decades ago without much notice. "Inheritance," he muttered aloud. His first thought was some old family heirloom, maybe a small sum of credits, nothing that would change his life. Still, curiosity pricked at him, so he agreed to the call. The next hour passed in a blur of legal jargon, official documents, and digital signatures. Jard leaned back, staring at the screen. According to the files, Howard Tallon had left him Outpost K-17, a mining station on the edge of the Shard Mountains. The legal documents stated it was currently uninhabitable and considered abandoned. Jard laughed nervously. "Uninhabitable, abandoned, that sounds like a death trap," he muttered to himself. Yet, despite the warning, a spark of curiosity lit in his chest. Maybe, just maybe, there was more to this outpost than anyone realized. 2 days later, Jard found himself aboard a small transport shuttle, leaving behind the endless fields of Alurin 5. The journey to the Shard Mountains was long and tense. The shuttle passed over jagged peaks, glowing mineral veins cutting across the rocks like silver threads. Jard had never seen anything like it. When he finally arrived, the outpost sprawled before him like a skeleton of its former self. Rusted walls, broken antennas, and collapsed solar panels gave it the appearance of a forgotten relic. A cloud of dust hung in the air, disturbed by his landing. Jard stepped off the shuttle, his boots crunching on gravel mixed with metal fragments. "Looks worse than I imagined," he muttered, brushing a hand across a bent doorway. The station's main building sagged slightly to one side, and the entrance was partially blocked by debris. Yet, there was something in Jard's chest that tightened with excitement. He had a feeling this place had stories to tell. The first few hours were spent exploring. Jard moved slowly, carefully stepping over broken machinery and shattered glass. Old mining carts lay overturned, their wheels rusted solid. The control room's panels were dark, and the central computer hummed weakly, as if waking from a long sleep. Jard's farmer's instincts told him to check the basics: air circulation, water supply, power systems. Most of it was dead. Still, he made notes, took photos, and inspected every corner. Then, almost absent-mindedly, he switched on a small scanner he carried for soil tests. A flicker of light passed across the device's screen. He frowned. The scanner detected unusual mineral readings, strange, strong, and concentrated in certain areas beneath the outpost. "That can't be right," Jard whispered. He recalibrated the device, ran multiple scans, and checked against known ore charts. No mistake. The readings showed high-value crystalline ore, buried under layers of sediment and rock. Billion credit value if the market would allow it. Jard sank onto the ground, leaning back against a wall. He felt a mix of disbelief and excitement. $2 billion buried here in this dump," he murmured. The thought that all of the powerful corporations and mining companies had overlooked this treasure made his heart beat faster. He spent the next day testing further. Using small drones salvaged from the outpost, Jard mapped the terrain beneath the structure. He discovered that the ore veins spread across a wide area, hiding under old tunnels and collapsed shafts. The richness of the deposits was staggering. Yet the outpost itself was in no condition for mining. Broken airlocks, rusted support beams, and malfunctioning robots meant that any attempt to extract the ore immediately would be dangerous. Jard knew that, but he also knew one thing. This outpost was his now, and he could take his time. That night he sat on a metal crate, staring at the stars visible through the broken roof panels. The twin moons of Aluran 5 cast pale light across the rubble. His mind raced with possibilities. With patience, ingenuity, and a bit of luck, he could restore this place. He could make it functional again. The first challenge was simple survival. The air filters needed replacement, and the water tanks were corroded. Jard spent hours improvising solutions. Using pipes from the irrigation systems he had worked with back home, he created a temporary water filtration system. He scavenged old solar panels, cleaned them, and connected them to power batteries salvaged from broken robots. It wasn't perfect, but it gave him enough energy to operate lights, scanners, and small equipment. Days turned into a week, and the initial excitement shifted to steady work. Jard cleared debris, repaired broken floors, and organized storage areas. His farmer's patience came in handy. He treated each task methodically, noting problems and solutions like he had done with planting and harvesting. One morning, while examining an old storage room, Jard noticed something unusual. A stack of old mineral crates, buried beneath dust, contained samples of ore. He picked one up, brushing off the grime, and held it to the light. It shimmered, translucent and glowing faintly. The scanner confirmed it. This was high-grade crystalline ore, exactly what the readings had shown. Jard felt a thrill. No one had cared about this place for decades, but he had stumbled onto something incredible. Yet, even with this discovery, he was cautious. He didn't want the news to spread too fast. He knew corporations would swarm if they found out, armed with drones, legal threats, and armies. This outpost, forgotten and abandoned, was his advantage. For the next few weeks, Jard continued his investigations. He traced ore veins, marked dangerous areas, and made mental maps of tunnels and shafts. He discovered old machinery, some functional, some barely alive, and began restoring the simpler devices first. One evening, while repairing an old scanner in the control room, he heard a faint hum. The computer terminals flickered to life, dusty screens displaying faded messages from decades ago. He spent hours reading logs, learning about the previous miners, the challenges they faced, and the reasons the outpost had been abandoned. Most interesting of all was a note about an experimental mining technique, abandoned because of safety concerns. Jard read it carefully. With a mix of old outpost machinery and his farmer's ingenuity, he realized he could attempt a safer version. It wasn't just about finding the ore anymore. It was about using his creativity to solve problems the previous engineers had failed to fix. By the end of the first month, Jard had transformed the outpost in small but significant ways. He had electricity, running water, and habitable areas. He had scanned the ore deposits, mapped tunnels, and learned enough to plan safe extraction in the future. And he had a growing sense of confidence. He was no longer just a farmer. He was a pioneer, standing at the edge of a forgotten frontier with a treasure that the galaxy had overlooked. As he sat outside, watching the sun set behind the jagged Shard Mountains, Jard allowed himself a rare smile. The journey ahead would be long and difficult. Corporations, legal battles, and technical challenges awaited him, but he felt ready. He had inherited more than an outpost. He had inherited a chance to prove what humans could do when they combined patience, ingenuity, and courage. For the first time, Jard didn't just see himself as a farmer. He was a human capable of shaping the future, one careful step at a time. The ore was there, waiting. And so was the story of a ruined outpost ready to be reborn by human hands. Jard Talon awoke to the soft hum of the outpost's solar panels. The sun was rising over the jagged Shard Mountains, casting golden light across the ruined walls he had slowly repaired. For weeks, he had been working tirelessly, restoring Outpost K to life, mapping the ore veins and improvising ways to make the station habitable. But the quiet peace was about to end. As he stepped outside, he noticed a small fleet of corporate drones hovering in the distance. Their sleek, metallic bodies glinted in the sunlight. They scanned the horizon, sending beams of light over the mountains and into the outpost. Jard froze. He had expected this moment eventually. News traveled fast in the galaxy. Someone had already caught wind of the discovery. He took a deep breath. There was no panic in him, only calculation. Farmers didn't panic, they solved problems. He retreated back inside and checked the outpost's communication system. Sure enough, incoming transmissions from corporate offices demanded immediate surrender of the outpost. Threats, legal notices, and offers of cooperation were sent all at once. Jard smiled faintly. He had expected nothing less. "They think they can take it with a few drones and legal papers," he muttered. "They haven't met humans yet." The first step was preparation. Jard knew the corporations would try to take control quickly. He had to secure the outpost and protect the ore until he understood how to manage it safely. He spent the next hours reinforcing doors, repairing airlocks, and setting up hidden passages in the outpost's tunnels. Using his knowledge of the terrain, he created natural barriers, fallen rocks, narrow passages, and false pathways that could confuse intruders. Next, he scavenged old equipment from the outpost. Broken mining bots, partially functional drones, and even old sensor arrays were repurposed. With simple engineering and improvisation, he modified them to patrol the outpost, sending false signals to any approaching drones. It was a basic defense system, but it was enough to buy time. By the third day, the first corporate team had arrived in person. A small shuttle landed on the plateau near the outpost, and a group of men and women in sleek uniforms stepped out. They carried advanced scanners, portable mining rigs, and weapons. Their leader, a tall woman named Kara Voss, approached the main building. "Mr. Talen," she said, her tone polite but firm. "Outpost K belongs to the Galactic Mining Corporation. Step aside and this will be easy for everyone." Jard shook his head. "It's mine now. I inherited it. You'll have to go through me first." Kara raised an eyebrow, as if amused by the idea that one human farmer could stand against a corporation. "This isn't a farm. You can't protect it. You don't even know the ore's potential." Jard smiled faintly. "Maybe, but I know patience, observation, and problem-solving. That's more than most of your people have." And so the first confrontation began. The corporate team attempted to scan the outpost, but Jard's improvised devices sent false readings. The drones patrolled false corridors, motion sensors activated in empty halls, and the entrance to the richest ore vein was hidden behind a collapsed tunnel Jard had partially cleared and rigged. Kara's team was frustrated. They couldn't find the ore or even understand why the readings were inconsistent. In the meantime, Jard began restoring some of the old outpost machinery. He repurposed broken conveyor belts, mining arms, and robotic arms from the abandoned station to create a small ore handling system. It wasn't sophisticated, but it allowed him to move small samples safely. He also realized he couldn't do it all alone. Using his contacts from the farming community and old friends who had technical skills, Jard recruited a small team. There was Ilara, a retired engineer with a sharp mind and steady hands; Bren, a botanist who knew how to manage fragile ecosystems; and Nico, a former exogeologist who had worked on several asteroid mining projects. Together, they formed a human team that could solve problems creatively, something no corporation had considered. The team worked day and night. They repaired old sensors, built temporary living quarters, and mapped safe paths through the tunnels. Nico analyzed the ore samples and discovered that the crystalline deposits were reactive. They could destabilize if exposed to sudden heat, pressure, or vibration. Only careful handling could extract them safely. Jard realized this was his advantage. Corporations relied on brute force, technology, and automation. Humans, with patience and intuition, could accomplish what machines could not. One morning, a small drone squadron sent by Kara attempted to sneak into the outpost. Jard and his team had predicted the move. Using a combination of mirrors, lights, and sound traps, they created illusions of activity in one corridor while quietly moving in another. The drones flew into the false zones, registering signals that didn't exist. Within minutes, they were confused and sent back to the shuttle. Kara realized she was dealing with a human mind that didn't follow predictable patterns. She decided to confront Jard directly. She arrived at the outpost again, this time with a larger team, ready to force him out. Jard met her in the main hall. The walls were patched with improvised metal sheets, wires dangling safely, and old control panels blinking with weak power. "You've bought yourself time," Kara said, "but this outpost cannot last against us. Surrender now." Jard looked at her calmly. "This outpost will last because I understand it. I know its weaknesses and I know its strengths. You rely on your tech, but it's predictable. Humans, we are not." The standoff lasted hours. Kara tried to intimidate him, offering wealth, positions, and threats. Jard countered with logic and clever explanations of the outpost's unique conditions. Slowly, Kara began to realize that brute force alone would not work here. Meanwhile, the team discovered something incredible. Deep within a sealed tunnel, they found an untouched section of ore. It was pure, glowing faintly under the dim light of their portable lamps. Bren carefully examined the surrounding rock and realized that the ore's stability was dependent on the tunnel's natural pressure. Any extraction needed precision and delicate handling. Jard smiled. Exactly why machines alone cannot do this. Only humans with care and patience can harvest this safely. Over the next weeks, they worked in shifts. Jard and Alara designed a small mining protocol using jury-rigged tools and sensors. They moved tiny amounts of ore at a time, stabilizing it before transferring it to storage crates. Nico analyzed every sample, ensuring that nothing reacted dangerously. Bren managed the small ecological systems, keeping the air and water safe inside the tunnels. The corporations tried repeatedly to gain access. Drones, scouts, and even legal threats arrived almost daily. But each time, Jard's team found new ways to protect the outpost. They created decoys, false tunnels, and warning signals. Every attempt by outsiders failed because they underestimated humans' adaptability. One day, a major challenge arose. A small earthquake struck the Shard Mountains, destabilizing part of the outpost. Dust filled the corridors and old support beams cracked. Jard's team sprang into action. Using ropes, metal braces, and sheer muscle, they reinforced the walls. Machines would have failed without human improvisation, but humans adapted in real time, saving the outpost and the precious ore. By the end of the month, a balance had emerged. Kara and her corporation realized that they could not take the outpost by force. Jard had transformed the ruined station into a functional, secure base. Humans had survived where machines alone would have failed. One evening, as the sun set over the mountains, Jard gathered his team. The outpost, once abandoned and useless, now hummed with life. Lights flickered on in repaired corridors. Water flowed through makeshift pipes. Sensors monitored every tunnel. And in hidden vaults, the richest ore deposits sparkled, safe from greedy hands. "Not bad for a farmer," Alara said, smiling. Jard chuckled. "It's more than that, it's what humans do best. We adapt, we think, we solve problems. Machines and money are tools, but they can't replace creativity, patience, and courage." Nico nodded. "We've proven something important. Corporations may have technology, but humans have something they'll never understand: ingenuity, Bren added, and respect. We're not here to take the land. We're here to understand it, to work with it. Jard felt a swell of pride. The outpost was no longer a ruin. It was alive, protected, and thriving because of human skill and determination. And as long as they remained, no corporation could simply take it by force. For the first time, Jard allowed himself to look at the future. Extraction of the ore would take careful planning, but they had the advantage. Humans could do what machines and money alone could not. The struggle had begun, but so had the triumph. Outpost K, forgotten for decades, was slowly becoming a symbol of what humans could achieve, not through brute force, but through patience, intelligence, and unity. Jard looked out at the mountains, feeling the wind on his face. Somewhere out there, Kara Voss and her team planned their next move. But he wasn't afraid. He had a team, a plan, and the human spirit on his side. And that, he knew, was stronger than any corporation. For now, the outpost was safe, and the ore, $2 billion in hidden treasure, was in human hands, waiting for careful minds to unlock its secrets. The suns of Aluran 5 rose over the jagged peaks of the Shard Mountains, casting long shadows across Outpost K-17. The station, once a forgotten ruin, now buzzed with life. Lights flickered in repaired corridors, water flowed steadily through patched pipes, and the hum of restored machinery filled the air. Jard Talon stood on a platform overlooking the main hub, his arms crossed, a satisfied smile on his face. It had been months since he had first discovered the hidden ore deposits, months of hard work, clever improvisation, and constant vigilance against corporate teams. Now the outpost was no longer just a shelter or a ruin. It was a fully functional base, ready to demonstrate what humans could do. Jard knew the corporations were still watching. Drones hovered at the edge of the mountains, scanning, recording, and reporting. But now he held the advantage. Human creativity, intuition, and patience had turned the outpost into a fortress of ingenuity that machines alone could not overcome. He turned to his team: Alara, the retired engineer, Nico, the exogeologist, and Bren, the botanist. They were gathered in the main lab, reviewing data from the latest ore scans. "We've done it," Alara said quietly, a rare smile breaking across her face. "The outpost is stable, and the ore can be extracted safely. No corporation could manage this without risking disaster." Jard nodded. "It's more than that. We've shown that humans can take what's broken and make it work. Machines, money, and power aren't everything. Ingenuity is." Nico checked the latest ore samples, carefully noting their properties. "These crystals aren't just valuable for credits. Their structure could improve energy storage systems across the galaxy. If used correctly, they might even enhance starship drives. The potential is enormous," Bren added, "and the outpost itself can support agriculture. We can create a self-sustaining environment. We can grow food, recycle water, and maintain life here indefinitely. This isn't just mining. It's a human home in the stars." Jard looked around at the outpost he had inherited in ruins. Everything had changed. K-17 was no longer a relic of neglect. It was a symbol of human resilience. The first step of his next plan was outreach. He had no desire to destroy or hoard the ore, but he needed to show the galaxy that humans could manage resources responsibly. He drafted messages to the corporate offices, proposing cooperation, but not on their terms. His terms emphasized sustainability, safety, and human oversight. When Kara Voss returned, this time with a full corporate team and armed security, she found something she had not expected. Jard greeted her not with fear, but with confidence. "This is your outpost now," Kara said, her tone sharp. "Step aside or we take it by force." Jard shook his head. "You can take it by force, yes, but you cannot manage it safely. Only humans can. If you want the ore, you will need to work with us, and you will follow human-led protocols." Kara paused. She looked around at the thriving outpost, automated systems carefully monitored by humans, tunnels reinforced and safe, environmental systems regulating air and water. She realized that taking it by force could risk the ore, the outpost, and even human lives. Reluctantly, she agreed to a trial. Jard would lead the extraction, and the corporations could observe. Any attempt to override the protocols or take control would result in loss of the ore, potentially destroying billions of credits in value. Jard's team set to work. Carefully, systematically, they extracted the ore, moving small amounts at a time. Sensors monitored pressure, vibration, and temperature. Every step was precise. Automated systems assisted only under human guidance. Corporate drones observed but could not intervene. The process was slow, meticulous, and undeniably effective. Weeks passed. The outpost functioned like a living organism. Human ingenuity guided every decision. Corporations began to understand that brute force could never replace observation, patience, and creative problem-solving. One afternoon, Kara approached Jard privately. "I'll admit it," she said quietly. "I underestimated humans. This is impressive. Your team has done what we thought impossible. Perhaps we have something to learn from you," Jard smiled. "We're not just miners, Kara, we're humans. We observe, adapt, and solve problems. That's what machines cannot do alone," Kara nodded. "Then let's make a deal. Cooperation on your terms." With that agreement, the outpost entered a new phase. Corporations provided resources and expertise, but only under human-led guidance. Jard's team trained corporate engineers, showing them how careful observation and patience could prevent accidents and maximize yield. The outpost's productivity soared. Ore extraction became efficient and safe. The local environment, once considered barren and harsh, was now partly cultivated. Small gardens flourished within controlled habitats, water was recycled, and energy came from repaired solar arrays and auxiliary power units. Humans had transformed a neglected ruin into a hub of innovation and sustainability. The news spread across human-settled planets. Outpost K became famous, not only for its $2 billion ore deposits, but for what humans had accomplished. Engineers, farmers, miners, and scientists celebrated the story of a human farmer who inherited a ruin and, through creativity and perseverance, turned it into a beacon of human capability. Jard continued to innovate. He experimented with new extraction techniques, blending traditional mining methods with careful observation and human judgment. He encouraged collaboration, emphasizing that the land and resources were valuable but also fragile. Corporations slowly adapted to his methods, realizing that ethical, patient management was more profitable in the long term than aggressive, destructive tactics. One day, while walking through the tunnels, Jard paused to admire the work his team had done. Alara was calibrating sensors, Nico was studying ore samples, and Bren was tending to a small indoor garden. The outpost hummed with quiet efficiency. "It's more than I imagined," Jard said softly. "Not just the ore. This place, it's alive, because of humans." Alara looked at him. "We've shown something important. Humans are adaptable. We can make what's broken work. We can turn ruins into opportunities," Jard nodded. "And not for greed, for understanding, for innovation, for life." The twin suns set behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the outpost. Outside, corporate drones hovered silently, recording every moment. But for the first time, Jard didn't fear them. He had shown what humans could do, and the world was taking notice. In the following months, the outpost expanded. Additional habitats were built, powered by sustainable energy. Small communities of human engineers, scientists, and farmers arrived to help manage the station. Education programs taught new settlers how to operate safely and efficiently, blending knowledge from farming, engineering, and geology. The ore continued to be extracted, but carefully. Billion credit shipments were sent across human-settled space, not to enrich a corporation, but to fund further exploration, research, and sustainable settlement projects. Jard ensured that profits were reinvested, turning Outpost K-17 into a model of responsible human expansion. Even Kara Voss began to see the value in Jard's methods. She stayed as an observer, slowly learning that human creativity, ethics, and patience could outperform even the most advanced AI and automated systems. The greatest triumph came quietly. One evening, as Jard walked along the edge of a cliff overlooking the Shard Mountains, he realized something profound. He had inherited more than an outpost and valuable ore. He had inherited a chance to prove what humans could do. They could take what was broken and make it strong. They could take what was forgotten and make it valuable. They could take danger and turn it into opportunity. Humans were more than miners, more than engineers, more than farmers. They were innovators, adapters, and caretakers of what they touched. And Outpost K was a testament to that truth. Jard looked up at the stars that began to appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere among them, other abandoned outposts, forgotten colonies, and overlooked treasures waited. Humans would reach them. They would explore, adapt, and thrive. And it would always be done the human way, with curiosity, courage, and intelligence. The outpost had survived, the ore had been secured, and humanity had proven itself once again. Jard smiled as he watched his team work, knowing that they had not just inherited a ruin, they had inherited a future. The outpost would thrive for decades, perhaps centuries. And every time someone asked how a single human farmer had turned a ruined station into a galactic marvel, the answer was simple: humans never give up. Humans find solutions. Humans prevail. The sons of Alurin 5 disappeared below the horizon, and in the quiet, steady hum of the outpost, Jard felt a profound sense of peace. The struggle was over. The triumph had begun, and humanity once again had proven its worth.